The Zhou. Arguably the longest lasting dynasty, it came from 1046 BC to 256 BC, and was among the first to truly unite China. Let's talk about its rise. Zhou Wu led 45,000 men and 300 chariots across the Yellow River to take down the last tyrannical king of the Shang Dynasty at the Battle of Mu, thus establishing the Zhou. Does it sound like I'm bored because I am? And let me tell you why. Every dynasty up to this point, and pretty much every one after this, all had the same story. It's the cycle. But here's the difference. Zhou Wu was a peasant, something that never happened before. Only noblemen could rule, right? Wrong. As Zhou Wu stated in the People's Mandate of Heaven. After upheaving the Shang, the Zhou declared that the royal being was in accord with the Mandate of Heaven, and that the mandate accords to only the people's will. Since they had seized power was what the people wanted, and thus it had to be what the heavens wished for. Now, there are two main parts of Zhou history, Western Zhou and Eastern Zhou. Western Zhou, political and military control was all by the Zhai family, up until about 771 BC. In 770 BC, after a bunch of complicated political relationships up on the royal level, the capital is moved east when a powerful marquis son is at last declared the ruler. Now, inside of the Zhou, and inside of the Eastern Zhou, are two main periods, the Warring States and then the Ottoman Spring. Both are named after important historical chronicles. Now, during Ottoman Spring, it was a generally good time with the 100 Schools of Thought. 100 Schools of Thought was a golden age of cultural and intellectual expression, with many ideas circling, the main four being Confucianism, Moism, Taoism, and legalism. Now, this brings us on to philosophy. Chinese philosophy was developing during the Zhou period with the 100 Schools of Thought and Confucius' life, as well as Lao Tzu's, the founder of legalism. The Li also developed the Lie, and it was a ritual system dealing with manners as, you don't care. Basically, it just corresponded with Confucianistic teachings, and it became the heart of imperial ideology. Let's go back to the ruling. The rule at the time was under feudalistic control. The idea was the time period was ruled in a similar fashion to medieval feudalism, with the exception that, well, the Chinese was slightly more centralized, with 5 ruling classes behind the royalty. These essentially act as Duke, Marquis, Count, Viscount, and Baron. The conquered fiefs, or states, were generally divided up, only becoming centralized when a duke needed them to, which means war. The lowest ruling class was Shi, which could be compared to, say, a scholar. They traveled around when power became centralized, and sometimes when not, just proposing ideas to the different states and teaching aspiring young men. The most famous was Confucius. The military was generally quite strong, and they were often at war with barbarians, so they kind of needed it to be. But nothing could be run without their industry. Fishing was still running pretty strong, but the main thing was agriculture now. Intense and often directed by the government, all the land was owned by nobles giving land to serfs. It was feudalism. Let's look at the people. Zhou Wu establishing the kingdom and coming up with the People's Mandate of Heaven. Immediately following him, after his 17 years or so, was King Chen. He put down all the rebellions that said, you can't do that. Next comes Confucius and Lao Tzu, who you've heard about. Confucius from, well, Confucianism, and Lao Tzu from legalism. The strict set of laws which would eventually become evident in the Qing. That's Zhou.